Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back for more conversations. When in April 2018, Facebook's guiding spirit, Mark Zuckerberg, testified before a Senate committee, he said that Facebook offers a remarkable service, linking more than 2 billion users around the world so we can stay connected to the people we love. But when Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican of Utah, asked him naively, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service? Zuckerberg smirked at the senator, responding, "We run ads." What Hatch failed to understand is that in the world of internet platforms, if you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. Facebook can be dangerous. In the 2016 presidential campaign, Russia targeted millions of Americans with political propaganda and used their own data to do it. Hate speech on Facebook triggered the murder of at least 9,000 Rohingya, a Muslim sect in Burma. In violation of its terms of service, Facebook made available the user profiles of 50 million subscribers to political consultant Cambridge Analytica, as well as others, enabling that firm to harvest psychographic profiles for partisan political purposes. With us is Roger McNamee, a Silicon Valley insider and an original investor in Facebook. Roger has written a brilliant new best-selling book entitled Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe, in which he argues that Zuckerberg is playing Facebook consumers, getting their valuable data for nothing, and selling it to others for huge profits. We're pleased to welcome Roger McNamee to this table.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Roger, tell us something about your background.
So I started investing in technology in 1982, which was the tail end of what we call affectionately the Apollo period. The guys in the white short sleeve shirts with the ties, the plastic pocket protectors, working on the space shuttle. I was there all the way through the personal computer industry, all the way through the world of enterprise computing, to the beginning of the internet, all the way through that era to the present day. And so I was lucky enough in 2006 to meet a 22-year-old Mark Zuckerberg. The company was 2 years old. It was still available only to students, high school and college students with a valid school email address. And he had a crisis he was dealing with, and one of his colleagues asked, would I meet with him? And so when I first met with him, I gave him a path through a fundamental crisis he was facing. Essentially, Yahoo had offered $1 billion for Facebook, and everybody who knew told him to take the money.
That's quite a crisis. Why was that a crisis?
It was a crisis because he didn't want to sell. He believed that his vision was going to produce something better than it could possibly happen as a division of another company. And I happened to share that view, and I told him this before he said a word. I told him, Mark, you don't know me, but I believe either Yahoo or Microsoft's going to try to buy the company. They're going to offer $1 billion. Everybody's going to tell you to take it. But my own view is that you have something here that could be the most important company since Google. And because you have authenticated identity, because people cannot be anonymous on Facebook, you've created the first safe terrain, which means you're going to be the first social network that really works for the users. And had he stuck with that strategy throughout, I believe the statement would have been true. Anyway, I helped him navigate that situation. He was able to keep the company independent, which is what he wanted to do. And that began a 3-year period where I was one of his mentors.
And keep control of the company. So he's certainly very happy today he turned down the offer of $1 billion.
Oh, everybody is, right? I mean, in fairness, all I really did for him was help him explain to his parents and his board of directors and his management team that, hey, you guys all signed up for Mark's vision, right? It's not up to you to tell him when he has to sell it, particularly given that it's working the way it was.
Did you become one of the founding investors in Facebook?
No, so I was actually there 2 years after it started. So there were people before me. What happened was that I provided him this very helpful advice. And for a year after that, I was meeting with him, generally speaking, weekly, sometimes a little more often, sometimes a little less often. And then an opportunity came to invest in the company, which I did in 2007. But keep in mind, this was still very, very early in Facebook's history. And so I was there early enough to see the company when it was really before what we have today, before there was a news feed, before it looked even like what it looks like now.
And do you hold that investment today?
So I hold a very significant part of it. And I made that choice very consciously because I'm an activist now. And it's quite possible that in my activism, I'll cause people to become negative on the stock. And I didn't want anyone to accuse me of essentially saying bad things about a company I no longer had stock in. I figured I did very well on the way up in the company. I was prepared to take a hit on the way down if my activism caused that. And so I felt, morally speaking, it was the right thing for me to do to hold a position, and so that's what I'm doing.
You were also a great matchmaker for Zuck, weren't you? Because you introduced him to a lady.
I did.
A lady named Sheryl Sandberg.
So it happens that I was returning a favor. In 1999, Sheryl was the chief of staff to Larry Summers, who was the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. She was working with Bono from U2 on forgiving debt for countries in Africa and Asia and South America that were never going to be able to repay it. And this was called the Millennium Debt Forgiveness Fund. It was designed to restart emerging economies around the world. And Bono and Sheryl did this. It was one of the great humanitarian gestures. And it happened in those days. I was working for my favorite band, the Grateful Dead, helping them with the technology strategy. And Bono heard about it, and he wanted to meet the guy who was doing this. So he asked Sheryl, can you find out who this guy is in California? And Sheryl goes, I can do better than that. My brother-in-law works for him. And so she introduced me to Bono. Bono became my business partner in 2003 on Elevation Partners. And then in 2007, when Mark was looking for a chief operating officer, I said, I know exactly who you ought to hire.
Well, this wasn't all accidental because you're a musician yourself, aren't you? Aren't you a member of a band?
I'm a member of 3 bands. But
what's your instrument?
I play the guitar, I play the bass, and I sing the lead vocals. But in truth, my relationship to Bono happened because of technology, not because of music. I wasn't even a fan of U2 the day I met him. I mean, I became a big fan afterwards, but they came along at a point in time when I was very career focused, so I didn't catch them when they were on their way.
Okay, so you made the match. And you continue to watch Facebook, and you continue to watch your investment rise in value as Facebook's market cap soars. And then comes a period of disillusionment.
Well, I got lazy is what actually happened. And I got lazy because I wanted to believe that everything was going really, really well. There were a couple signals along the way that I should dig more deeply. And I was at the tail end of my career. I was preparing to retire at the end of 2015, and so I got lazy. But at the beginning of 2016, I'm on vacation with my wife. I'm on Facebook because, like so many people, I was addicted to it. I would check it multiple times a day. And I started to see things in the context of the Democratic primary in New Hampshire that violated my basic sense of what should be going on Facebook. And it essentially related to Facebook groups that were notionally associated with the Bernie Sanders for President campaign. And they were spreading these images with text that were horribly misogynist, and I thought completely inappropriate for a presidential campaign. And yet, every day, more and more people were spreading these. People I knew, friends of mine, were spreading these images. And I was trying to figure out, how could it be growing so rapidly? And what I knew, because I had worked with Facebook for a long time, that in all probability it meant somebody was spending money on advertising to lure people into these groups. And I'm trying to think, who would do that? It turned out, I think, that it was the Russians, but I didn't know that for more than a year after. Then I saw civil rights violations. In March of 2016, a corporation used Facebook's advertising tools to gather information on people who were interested in the Black Lives Matter movement. They were selling that information to police departments in violation of people's civil rights. And I thought that was horrible. Then in June, the United Kingdom had the Brexit referendum. And that was the first time I realized that in a political campaign, Facebook might be conferring advantage on the campaign that had the more outraged message, that there was greater virality to an outraged message than there was to a neutral one. And then the final straw for me was the Department of Housing and Urban Development cited Facebook because its advertising tools allowed for discrimination in violation of the Fair Housing Act. At that point, I wrote an opinion piece for a tech blog, but instead of publishing it, I sent it to Mark and to Sheryl, my friends, and I said, guys, there is something wrong with the business model, with the algorithms of Facebook, that is allowing bad actors to harm innocent people. And they got right back to me, but they went, nothing to see here. They're going, Roger, these are isolated situations. There's nothing about the business model, nothing about the algorithms. Just little mistakes. We've taken care of all of them, but we take you seriously. They handed me off to one of their key deputies, a friend of mine, and that was 9 days before the election. So I'm not even thinking that there's a risk that Facebook will have an impact on the 2016 election. 9 days later, I found out otherwise. And
What impact did it have?
I didn't know this then. I spent instead 3 months trying to persuade them to just protect the people who use their product, to help investigators figure out what had happened. My assumption was that the Russians interfered in the election. We knew that, and my assumption was that they'd used Facebook to get that done. And that was a hypothesis. What I subsequently found out is that Cambridge Analytica, the company you referred to earlier, had misappropriated 50 million Facebook user IDs and were able to match 30 million of them to U.S. voter files. So they had 30 million voters out of 220 total in the country. 131 million voted in the election. So they had a really large share of the electorate. They were able to
That's called mining.
Yeah, yes, but in this particular case, what they were able to do was to use the Facebook advertising tools to effectively have a different campaign for each one of those voters. And so they were able to target whatever the emotional issue was for each one, even if it had nothing to do with the campaign.
How did they get access to the advertising tools?
Well, because they do the advertising inside Facebook. So essentially what they did was they went to Facebook and said, we have this new idea for how to do political advertising. And it's going to take your advertising tools and do this micro-targeting, which no one had ever really done in a political context before, mostly because it wasn't possible until 2016. And the Facebook guys, being engineers, went, wow, that's really cool. You're going to try this new thing. We're engineers. We want to see how it works. And so the Trump campaign spent a lot of money, and Facebook actually had employees who supported it by actually running the campaigns. And in the process, they focused on suppressing the votes of suburban white women, people of color, and idealistic young people.
And how does an ad suppress the vote?
Well, essentially what they would do is discourage people from voting. They basically said, they went to white suburban women and basically made the pitch that Hillary Clinton was just a horrible person, a witch, and you really don't want to be voting because Trump's horrible, but so's Clinton, and democracy's broken, don't vote.
That was the pitch.
That was the pitch. They were all variants of that basic idea. Except for the
black voters, they said.
It was the same thing. The Clinton family's always taken advantage of you, and Trump's awful, but so you don't want to vote at all. Don't participate. You can rise above this, right? It was very, very cynical, right? It was not about this is America, we have to compromise, you need to make a choice between two people. It was democracy's no good, don't participate. And for a campaign to do that, that's an unattractive situation, right? And my hypothesis was that was what was going on. And
so at the same time they're saying vote for Trump, they're saying don't vote for anybody.
Well, but they're saying it to different people. Each person got their own message, right?
Or groups of people got the same message.
They may have, but weirdly enough, they could target very individually. I mean, for example, if they decided that your big thing was you like Chihuahuas, and they thought they could suppress your vote, they'd say, hey, both of these candidates drowned Chihuahuas in the bathtub. Therefore, you shouldn't vote.
Or in a pizza parlor in Washington.
Whatever it is, right? And my point here is we had no defenses about that. And the really encouraging thing, okay, is that in 2018, there was more disinformation circulating in the market than there was in 2016. But three groups in particular stood out for their turnout: suburban white women, people of color, and idealistic young people.
That's in the midterm election.
In the midterm elections, they adapted. And this is part of why I'm so optimistic about the future. When I look at the problem, when I started, it was because I was so deeply involved in Facebook that I focused on them. What I've learned since then is that the problem's much broader than Facebook, and that it actually started with Google, right? And so if you say, what are the problem products? You'd say Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, and in different ways, LinkedIn, which is part of Microsoft, and Microsoft's search engine, which is Bing, and Amazon for a portion of what its business is. And that the real issue, what I've discovered, is that they've moved from an advertising model based on finding out what you like and appealing to what you like to a behavioral prediction business where they gather data wherever you can get it. They go and get your credit card transaction data. They get your bank records. They get your your location from your cell phone company. They get any health information they can get from web apps. They integrate it, get this high resolution portrait of you, and then try to predict behavior. And they sell those predictions to people. And at the same time, they have artificial intelligence products like recommendation engines that you may think are helping you by showing you things you already like. But in fact, what they're doing is trying to make that behavioral prediction come true by getting you to buy what they want to
So
sell.
let's go back to, for a minute, to the original business model. The original business model is that you and I, like 2.5 billion others today, subscribe to Facebook. In the course of subscribing to Facebook, we contact friends, peer-to-peer communications. Nothing wrong with that. And they have something called an algorithm. Now, explain what an algorithm is.
So essentially, an algorithm is a system designed to do a specified task, okay? And the way it works inside Facebook or Google is exactly as you described, which is to say, the issue here really isn't social networking. It's obviously not search. These are really high quality, valuable things that we all love for good reasons. The problem is that they've paired it with a business model, and they use the algorithms to identify things that we like or things they want us to like. And they are manipulating our attention in order to get us to spend more time. They do this two ways. First, they need to get us to come back frequently. So they use notifications and they use likes and things like that, which are like a slot machine. We have this basic human need, for rewards, and they give us lots of rewards. And they don't give it to us when the reward happens, or when the event happens. They give it to us when the artificial intelligence believes is the moment you're most likely to respond by logging in. And so they give you notifications. So they get you to come back. And then once you're inside the system, they have a problem. There are a lot of ads, there's a lot of content. How do they get you to spend enough time? So what they want to do is hit the part of your emotional spectrum that gets you to share and spend time. And they've tried happiness, and that works to some degree. The problem is the thing that makes me happy may make you jealous. So you're not going to share that. But the thing that makes me outraged or the thing that makes me afraid, if it makes you outraged or afraid, you're going to share it because sharing it makes you feel better. If you make everybody else feel the same way you do, right? If you're afraid, being afraid in a group is way more comforting than being afraid by yourself.
So it works, in effect, by pandering to the extremes of human emotion.
It does. In fact, I would say it preys on the weakest elements of the human psychology, and it turns out that things like disinformation, they go 70% further and 6 times faster. That's from an MIT study. So 70% further, 6 times faster. There is something about human being that craves convenience and that is drawn to kind of outrageous disinformation over fact. And these are elements of human nature. And there were 2 choices these companies could have made. One is they could have said, you know what? We're better than that. We really want to promote critical thinking. We really want to promote thoughtful engagement in politics or engagement issues. Or we want to maximize our earnings, so we're going to appeal to the lowest emotions possible. And they chose the latter.
So is education in our high schools and colleges really the antidote to a Facebook, that we should encourage critical thinking? So when
definitely.
A subscriber reads that Hillary Clinton is part of a pedophile ring at a pizza parlor in Washington, that they say this is nonsense.
So I think critical thinking is essential, and I do believe education is a big part of it. One of the things that I have learned in this process, which I talk a lot about in Zucked, is that we ran an experiment on a whole generation of young people, thinking for the last 20 years that exposing them to technology early and aggressively was the best thing for them. What we've learned is, in fact, there's too much of a good thing, that really little kids, under 3, shouldn't be exposed to screens at all. And that between 3 and, say, 13 or 14, you want to have a bare minimum. And you for sure don't want screens in the classroom. You want little kids learning to focus on the teacher and learning to socialize with their classmates. And if you have a screen, they're going to be playing Fortnite. They're not going to be engaging in the class. And so the issues that Facebook has to deal with are, it owns Instagram. And there's a huge bullying problem on Instagram, particularly with preteens and young teenagers.
Slut shaming.
Well, body shaming, the whole thing, right? And then with the older teenagers, you get the fear of missing out. Everybody's at a party at Jimmy's house, you're not there. That's a different form of bullying. You know, kids, teenagers in particular, are incredibly sensitive to the social hierarchy, and they're forming a lot of the things about their self-esteem in that period. And this technology is undermining that. And it's time to ask questions about the business model. We have to ask questions like, why is it legal for anybody to do business in our personal financial transactions? So credit card data and
Well, that's
bank
not
data.
Facebook.
No, but they buy it. My point is, if we're looking at what the problem is, it is this data commerce. These guys are in the business of...
All right, well, let's look at legalities. I become a subscriber to Facebook, and they're asking me questions. They're asking my date of birth and where I live and what I do and am I in love, and they learn a lot about me. Now,
tell me
I'm
where...
giving them that information.
Tell me where...
What's wrong with that?
Tell me where in your... No, I don't see anything wrong with that. Tell me where in your credit card thing is the thing that says that the processing company, not the credit card company, but the processing company, is allowed to sell your data to anybody they want.
Nowhere.
Show me where in your cellular phone bill you're made aware of the fact that they're going to sell your location to everybody.
Nowhere.
So my point is, if you're Facebook and you're Google, that information is gold.
But this is not a what lawyers call a fiduciary relationship, a relationship of trust. It's an arm's length relationship, and they don't have no duty to disclose what they're going to do with my data.
And my basic point to you is that I believe this is a topic of conversation that we should have now. We should not assume that it is inevitable that we have to circle the drain and go down the drain. Really bad things are happening. We made decisions at the beginning of the 20th century that the Wild West frontier that created the robber barons, as productive as it was to create Standard Oil and the steel trusts and the banking trusts, that we would be better off if we had a different model that had more competition and promoted a broader participation.
The antitrust laws.
Exactly. But that was a period. Now we're in a new period with the same kind of problem. What these companies are doing, again, I'm returning to Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, what they're doing is analogous to what the robber barons are doing. They have found a new good in the world, which is called behavioral prediction. They basically gather all the data and they create this self-fulfilling market because they're more or less monopolists or oligopolists in the space. And we as a society have to decide, are we okay having our lives run by these guys, right? It's okay for them to have economic power, but they have political power, right? They are the largest voice in every country in which they operate. And nobody elected them.
Haven't they built a better mousetrap? I mean, what is the difference between what they do and a political consultant who garners a huge mailing list of voters, potential voters?
So they run both the marketplace and their participants. That's what the difference is, okay? The political consultant doesn't run the marketplace. So my observation here is they have the same problem relative to politics that Amazon has when it runs a marketplace and then it does Amazon Basics and competes against the guys in the marketplace with better information. The same thing Google does in advertising, where it maintains the marketplace and at the same time has products that it sells and that it promotes inside its marketplace.
Okay, so
those are all classic violations of
fairness. lots of evils you've pointed to. Hate speech led to deaths in Burma. Monopoly power that they may be abusing.
By the way, they've led to deaths in the United States.
Deaths in the United States, invasions of privacy, causing kids to engage in addictive behavior.
Right.
All these problems. What do you think is the solution?
So I think there's several pieces of solution, because as you point out, they're public health issues, they're democracy issues, they're privacy issues, and they're issues related to the economy and competition. So I want to recognize that there are some things that cut across them and some you have to do specifically. The first thing I want to do is go after the business model of trading, the thing that allows people to assert ownership, effectively eminent domain of our data, and use it any way they want without our permission. I believe that that is a fundamentally un-American thing. It takes away our liberty. And so I'd like to go after that by asking the question, why is it legal to trade in private financial information, health information, location information? Why is it even possible to hold data about kids under 18, right? I just think all of that is wrong. And the second thing I want to do is I want to use antitrust in order to create space for an alternative business model to develop. Basically, I believe the biggest business opportunity of the next 20 years is the one that fixes this mess, okay? That we need to have social
By the way,
networks
it's a,
that don't harm.
contract. It's a contract, and you have kids under 18 entering into the contract when they don't have the capacity to do it.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Okay? So we have lots of things that are a flaw here. There also, I think it's fair to say that that consent in these cases is not given with appropriate levels of disclosure and appropriate levels of understanding.
Okay.
And
so
so,
unfortunately, we have to wrap up.
Yeah.
But I have a
and
question for you.
So the last point,
Yeah.
we have an election coming up. The most important issue that we can bring left and right together on is wrestling these guys under control. This is an issue of right versus wrong, not right versus left.
Right versus wrong, and not left versus right.
Yeah.
So, Roger McNamee, I have a question for you. Are our internet platforms like Facebook doing more harm than good as we sit here today?
I think today that is true.
Today, that is true. Thank you so much for
My
coming
pleasure.
by. This has been just marvelous. And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations. I'm Jim Zirin. Take care and all the best.